our third session on mindful living. In the first session, we talked about lifestyle adjustments, finding the proper place to develop more mindful living. If you need to move. These are, if it's important enough, you make the adjustments, right? If it's important enough to you to live sanely, you'll make the adjustments that you need to do to live sanely. And some people are living in physical places that just are driving them crazy. And maybe you're one of them, I don't know. Getting less busy, getting unbusy. And this is hard for all of us. We are living in a time where we think that busyness is a virtue in and of itself. And it is not. First of all, it depends what you're busy doing. And second of all, it depends on how you're doing it. And if you're doing it with all just stressed out and with like a chicken with its head cut off, well, that's not virtuous at all. And it's not doing anyone any good. It's just driving you crazy again. So busyness, just staying busy all the time, has never been in the spiritual traditions thought to be some kind of virtue. It's a virtue only in the kind of madcap society that we live in today. And you can check and see if you're susceptible to this. I usually joke with the yoga students when I teach in yoga classes that a yogi should be practicing being unbusy, so that when somebody calls you up on the phone and says, what are you doing? You should say, nothing, not much. I'm a yogi. I don't do much. I sit, move my body around, meditate, don't do much. And you can hear what, you're laughing because, we're embarrassed to say that because people then sort of judge us and say, whoa, you must not be living a worthwhile life if you're not doing much. And and then they'll go on, and maybe you've done the same thing when people ask you, how are you or what are you doing, to talk for 15, 20 minutes about how busy they are. And I'm going here, got to do this and got to do that, really what's the bottom line of that message? What are they trying to convey? See how important I am, you see? See how worthwhile my life is, I'm just busy all the time. And that's a big mistake, just a, bad view. So, and less communication. Stop seeing so many people all the time, it says in the text, right? Stop hanging out with people all the time. And that means both physically and nowadays virtually. And learn to be alone and quiet. And if you have a hard time with that, there are people who sort of are repelled by the idea of being alone. And by the way, being alone and lonely are two different things. Solitude and loneliness are quite different. So, if you're a person who has this kind of resistance to being alone, well, who is it that you don't want to be with? And that's a sort of a sign that, you need to do some work getting to know yourself, and liking yourself more. So unplugging, stop texting all the time, get control of the communications. These are just survival tips nowadays, let alone mindfulness, just survival is kind of taking control of all that. So these kinds of tips that we talked about 2 nights ago on how to live a lifestyle more conducive to mindfulness. And probably the most important of those tips was to live a good, clean, moral life. And no one in this room is unclear on what morality is now. We've gone through it many different times from many different angles, right? And if you can't remember the 10 of this and the 12, 20, there was 20, I think, from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, right? Do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. I mean, that's all you need to know. That's just bottom line. And all the rest is just the details. Don't harm, don't steal, don't kill, don't sleep with people who would be, whose relationships you would be ruining, or your own relationship by sleeping around with people you shouldn't sleep with. You know, it's just about restraining yourself from harming others, just like you don't want to be harmed by others. That's all. It's no, you know, don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out morality. So that's the most important when it comes to, you know, the preconditions, the prerequisites for having some mindfulness in your life is to, you know, get control of your conscience so that it's not always bugging you because you know you've been living, you know, the wrong kind of life. Then last night we talked a little bit about mindfulness as a kind of a meditation practice. You know, the text that we looked at was really on how to meditate mindfully on what's going on here and now. And then we talked a little bit about the obstacles to mindfulness as a meditation practice. But keep in mind also that, you know, this is meditation of all sorts, is life training. It's not life escapism. You know, we've got like plenty of practice escaping from life, watching television, surfing the internet, you know, being cyborgs, you know, looking at a screen all day instead of living. Living virtually, you know, is a little bit of an escape. Mostly, yeah. 4.5 hours of television on average, you know, going to endless movies, 3D now, very realistic, you know. And so we don't need any more help with escapism. We need some help of, like, you know, confronting reality, living in reality. So meditation of all sorts is meant to do that. And if it isn't doing that, it's not much worth, okay? If it's just taking you off into some daydream, you know, and you can call it whatever you want. You can put Sanskrit names on it. But if it's just a daydream, it's just like watching TV. I had a professor when I was in graduate school who famously said, nonsense in Sanskrit is still nonsense. So, you know, meditation's a very, very important skill. But it's a skill that's helping us with the big skill, the real skill, which is the skill of living properly and aware and mindfully in the world. So that was last night. Tonight we'll start 2 nights on living mindfully in the world. So, you know, we've mentioned it. We've mentioned this, you know, beginning in all the classes, actually, that all of this is just to help us live in the world. So, but tonight I wanted to take some verses from a, you know, a really important text. I mean, this is a desert island text, you know what I mean? Like if you know, had only one text to bring as you're stranded on a desert island, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life would be a good choice, because it's just got everything. It's just got everything. You know, from any kind of like spiritual virtue real spiritual virtue you'd like to cultivate, and any kind of problem you're having with life, and you know, it's there somewhere in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. It's all there. So I use this text frequently for all kinds of purposes, and it just so happens that the 5th chapter of that is called Guarding Full Awareness. Guarding your full awareness. So apropos, I would guess, to mindfulness. And mindfulness, of course, as a concept, occurs in there. Mindfulness, as we'll see, is regarded in this text as the precursor to full awareness. You have to have mindfulness in order to have full awareness. So that's how mindfulness is functioning here. It's like the guard at the gate, mindfulness. And the gate, you know, what's inside the gate is full awareness. So the mindfulness is protecting all kinds of you know, potential problems from disturbing full awareness. So it's a very important treatment of the subject that we're about here with the mindful living thing. And I've kind of artificially just divided up the verses that I've chosen from that chapter into 2 parts. So we'll do some tonight, and then we'll do some tomorrow. And the artificial nature of this is, if you look on class 3, I've given it the title Mindfulness in Thought. Mindfulness in Thought. And then class 4 is Mindfulness in Action. And the reason I'm saying, isn't it? I can't remember if that's what I called it. I think so. Yeah. So the artificialness of it is that in the chapter, the author weaves back and forth between thought and action, actually. And so even in tonight's class, there'll be stuff about mindfulness in action as well as mindfulness in thought. And then in tomorrow night's class, there'll be stuff on mindfulness in thought as well as mindfulness in action. But just so I had different titles for the two classes. So this is from Shanti Deva. Shanti Deva is a nice name. Shanti means peace. And Deva is a name for God. So the God of peace, peace God. Deva in Sanskrit usually means one of the gods. You know, there are, according to some texts, 3,300 gods. And they so, you know, because there are a lot of them in India, right? There's a lot of gods. There's Ganapati, you're just singing to Ganesha, right? And, you know, he's the one with the elephant head. And then there's Shiva, that's Ganesha's daddy. And then there's Parvati, that's Ganesha's mom. And then the extended family with Vishnu and all those guys. And, you know, all the homeboys and girls. All the homeboys and girls. But the text goes on to do what you can do even with the most uneducated rickshawwala in India. If you go to India, you know, rickshawwalas are the guys with those like three-wheelers that tear around all over the place, usually high on bong, you know, dope. If you ever want to learn surrender, you just go and take a rickshaw in India. And if you ask even the most common, you know, rickshawwala, how many gods are there? They'll say, oh, there's 3 billion, or, you know, whatever. And you know, how many really are there? Oh, there's like 300. How many really are there? Oh, there's 3. How many really are there? It's just one. Just one God. One God with many, many, many appearances, right? Manifestations. So this is a big mistake, I think, that people make about polytheistic, you know, traditions, polytheistic, you know, religions and stuff like that, of which Hinduism is kind of obviously a polytheistic religion. But it's not like they believe there's a gajillion gods, really. You know, there's one God. Kind of everyone knows that, except for outsiders. Except for so-called monotheists who actually believe 3 in 1. So the deity that represents Shanti, the manifestation of God that is Shanti, is peace. And that's one manifestation of God. That's a nice name, Shanti Deva. This is a text that usually is dated to around 700 or 800 AD, and is one of the main texts of the Indian Mahayana tradition originally, and then it was translated into Tibetan and became one of the mainstays in all the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, all the sects of Tibetan Buddhism. So very important text, and as I said, one of the classics of world religious literature. And it's available in all kinds of translations. This is my translation. There are plenty of other translations out there, many of them quite good, And, you know, I'm not saying that my translation is somehow better, but it's mine. And this is how I understand the text. With the desire to protect one's practice, one should make efforts to guard the mind. If you want to protect your spiritual practice, you've got to watch your mind. And he says, and you should make some effort at that. Like, it's not going to happen automatically. It is not possible to protect one's practice if one does not guard the fickle mind. Sometimes they call it the monkey mind. Monkey mind. Monkey mind on amphetamines. And you know, if you've actually spent some time over this, you know, retreat, doing a little bit of meditation, you know, you probably have noticed that the mind is pretty much out of control, pretty much all the time. And so, you know, I've had many experiences of this with students. You know, we study meditation, and then we say, okay, let's go home and practice meditation. And they come back the next day going, you know, I uniquely cannot meditate. I must have ADD or, you know, some kind of other like psychological, you know, named disease. Because I sat down and tried to hold my mind on a single object for 5 seconds, and I couldn't even do that. Just like bouncing around, thinking about this and that. And you know, if you're feeling that way, you're not unique. Everyone's mind is like that originally, right? Without any kind of training, everyone's mind is like that, and you're just noticing what your mind has always been like. You see, when you sit down to try to actually tame it, you realize what an out-of-control wild beast it really is. For the first time, probably, if you just starting, right? And it's always been that way. It's not like all of a sudden when you try to start, then your mind becomes a wild beast. Then your mind becomes monkey mind. It's always been that way. Which is, you know, kind of mindfulness. This is good to know. It's good to know, like, what the problem is here, you know? What kind of problem we got here. You know, you could go through life potentially, if you've never actually tried to, you know, control your mind, to meditate. And so you could go through life thinking that, you know, you actually have a lot of mind control already. Don't need some damn meditation thing. Don't need mindfulness. What's all this mindfulness for? You know, 5-6 days of mindfulness. I'm already mindful, I think. You see, until you actually have to stop and like try. And notice that actually you're not mindful at all, not in control. So know your enemy, kind of, you know, like have some realistic understanding of how our minds are just really like a wild elephant, as he says in the next verse. Crazy elephants do not wreak the havoc in this world that the undisciplined elephant of the mind creates in hell and other realms. You know, in ancient India, they had a whole big cosmology with 8 gajillion hells and 5,000 heavens and all of that. But we created our own hell on earth. Never mind about, you know, afterlives. We created our own hell on earth, and it is our mind that is doing it. Our crazy, out of control, undisciplined elephant of the mind that creates the hell. But if the elephant, which is the mind, is completely restrained by the rope of mindfulness. Smriti Raju, the rope of mindfulness, is kind of a nice metaphor. You got the crazy elephant running around and you lasso it with the rope and you tie it down to a stake somewhere. So it doesn't just go hither and thither. Thither or thither? Is that thither? Hardly ever get to say that anymore. Hither and thither. Crazy elephants do not wreak the havoc in this world that the undisciplined elephant of the mind creates in hell and other realms. But if the elephant, which is the mind, is completely restrained by the rope of mindfulness, then all fear vanishes and complete well-being arrives. You know, this is a little bit of a sales pitch here at the beginning of the 5th chapter. You know, we're only at verse 3 or something, and he's telling you, you know, this was what would happen if we actually got some mindfulness, if we got some good mindfulness. Then all fear vanishes. I heard someone recently say, I'm pretty sure it was a Buddhist teacher, say, samsara, you know, this suffering life, this samsara is fear. Is fear. You see? It's shot through with fear. Our whole lives are shot through with fear. And that's another way of thinking about why we suffer. It's because we're afraid. We're afraid at every turn. We're afraid of other people. We're afraid of life. We're afraid of what's going to happen next. right? We're afraid of next week. We're afraid of the future. We're afraid of each other. We're afraid of ourselves. It's just fear all the way down. So he's saying with mindfulness, with the rope of mindfulness, with the training of the mind, you could lose that fear. You could become, as they say in Sanskrit, abhaya. Bhaya means fear. Abhaya means fearless. Do they still have those bumper stickers that they put on, like mostly on pickup trucks that often have gun racks in the back saying no fear? Wouldn't that be nice? What's the gun rack there for then? You see? If there's no fear. So yeah, but that's a very important goal. And that's a goal in life, you know, to live without fear. To live with some sense of security in the insecurity. Okay? A little bit of a contradiction. Acceptance of the insecurity. It's not like fear is going to go away if only I could have absolute security, because there is no absolute security. Life is changing all the time and in unpredictable ways. That's not how you get rid of fear, is to try to have the illusion of security, but to have faith in the insecurity. You trust in the insecurity. That it's going to be okay. It's all going to be good. It's all good. Isn't that like some TV guy says that? Some TV show? Anyway, it's just my own private joke. So Gandhi once said that if you believe in God, if you say that you believe in God, having fear, worry, is blasphemy against God. If you believe in God, then what do you got to worry about? You know, unless you believe in God that doesn't care about you, in which case you should switch it up. Trade it in on a better model. You know, what's the point of having a God like that? You see, that just doesn't care or can't do anything, you know, just like, we're not going to help you at all. I care so much, but we're not going to help you. Well, you know, what good are you, God? If that's God, then what's the point exactly? So if you have some sense of a higher power, you know, whatever you call it, then trust it, you know, have some trust, have some faith. Have some faith that things will be okay. And that doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen to you somehow, that nothing challenging will ever happen to you. That's not what it means. But it means that you have faith that you can handle it. That you can handle it because you've had the intervention of divine powers in your life that have told you how to handle it, that have taught you how to handle, you know, difficult situations. And you have. Everyone here has. You know, I didn't see anyone throughout the whole retreat going la, 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 la. I mean, maybe you put on earplugs that I couldn't see. But you know, you heard it. You've heard now how to live a good life and how to deal with the challenges of life, actually. You know, it's not like this is unknown. So have some faith, have some trust, and get rid of the fear, little by little by little. The fear is terrible. You know, it's terrible to live in fear. So he's saying this is one of the ads here, and complete well-being, sarva kritsam. Kritsam means whole. It's kind of like redundant, actually. Sarva means everything, and kritsam means whole. So it's like everything will be wholesome or something, you know? Everything will be holy. Only you put a W there in front of it. Are those two words related, Reverend Ann? Holy and H-O-L-Y and W-H-O-L-Y? It would be good if they were. Wouldn't that be good? Let's just say they are. Yeah, because everything's holy. Everything's potentially holy. The whole is holy. And it's just us without of our fear and ignorance saying, no, this is good and this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is acceptable, but this is not acceptable. You know, it's like this now, and as long as it's okay, I'll accept it. But when it gets difficult, then somebody made a cosmic mistake. You see, like as if we were the arbiters of that, the judges of what a mistake is cosmically. Your life is not a mistake. Everything in it is perfect the way it is and in need of improvement. Right? Acceptance, radical acceptance, and the courage to play the cards now. You see, to accept the cards and then the courage to play them in a good way. So with the mindfulness, he says, will come the absence of fear. Fear vanishes, and this beautiful phrase, sarva kritsam, the whole enchilada. Everything is acceptable, right? Everything is acceptable. Nothing rejected. And that's another way of thinking about the goal, actually. Perfect acceptance without fear. Without fear that it isn't right somehow, or it shouldn't be like this somehow, or, well, it's like this now. And it's always like this now. All one's enemies, lions, tigers, and bears, oh my, snakes, all the guardians of hell, witches, demons, they all become subdued simply because the mind has been controlled. All the enemies, so-called enemies out there, are all controlled when you subdue your mind. There are no enemies out there as enemies, you see. This is just a label. It's just an understanding. It's just fear. Fear of others. And he's rounded up the suspects here in ancient India. Tigers. If you meet a tiger or a lion or an elephant or a bear or a poisonous snake as you're walking around out there in the jungle, or even outside in the outskirts of your village, it's no joke. It's fearful. It's scary. So, you have to put your own words in here. Terrorists. There aren't any communists anymore, are there? Haven't they all gone away? Have the communists gone away yet? But now we've got terrorists and Muslims and, who else? What else? Huh? Monsanto executive, the 1%. All your enemies out there, they all get taken care of. They all become subdued simply because the mind has been controlled. Simply by taming the mind, all of them are tamed. Is that empowering or what? You see, no victimizing here. No, oh, I'm just a victim of Monsanto. Take control. Take control of your own responses. And fear is not a good one. Someone wrote me an email just as the retreat was beginning, saying, I don't know, she was reporting some factoid. Maybe it's not a factoid, I don't know. I haven't heard about it from anyone else but her, that some nuclear reactor is leaking in Japan into the ocean. Yeah, okay, yeah. And spreading out and everywhere, and it's hitting Australia apparently, everywhere. And, well, what should we do about that? Well, what do you think you should do about that? What can you do about that? Exactly. You see? What can you do about that except for get your knickers in a twist about it and feel fearful? Do what you can do in life. And there's lots of things we can do in life, except for worrying about nuclear reactors going, leaking things in the ocean. If you feel very strongly about that, well, you might want to join an organization that protests it, blah, 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 blah. But don't just sit around stressing about it. What good is that? Oh my God, the ocean's being polluted. Well, maybe so, maybe not. Maybe, yeah, maybe. But what is your fear? What is your fear going to do about the pollution in the ocean? You see? And again, tend your own garden a little bit. There's plenty of stuff that we can all be doing on a daily basis, interpersonally, to help build a better world, instead of worrying about these massive issues that we have very little control over, actually. And then just spinning our wheels over and over and over again about massive issues that we're not even really doing anything about, except for worrying. That's mostly what watching television news is about. Watching the news is mostly about watching stuff, that's making us scared, that's making us fearful, that's stressing us out, that we don't intend to do anything about, except for just watch it and get more stressed out about it. Somebody was circulating a meme, is that what you call them, meme? Or a logo or whatever it is, around the internet going, fight terrorism, turn off your television. You see, terrorists can't be a terrorist unless you're terrorized. Okay? They can bomb buildings, they can do all kinds of stuff, but unless you're terrorized, they can't be a terrorist. And so if you really want to let the terrorists win, get terrorized, because that's exactly what their goal is. The goal is to get everyone like all fearful. So fearful that, we start sacrificing our liberties and, worry about like other people on the subway and, all kinds of stuff happens. So just take control. This is the ancient teaching here, is if you want to take control of your fear of the so-called enemies outside, get control of your mind. That's why the one who speaks the truth said, that'd be the Buddha, the one who speaks the truth, all fears and immeasurable suffering are due to the mind alone. What else would they be due to? You see, how else could it happen that you are afraid? Except for your mind allows you to be afraid. Your mind is afraid. Who so laboriously devised the weapons in hell? Who laid the burning floor? And where'd those temptresses come from anyway? He's all about the temptresses. He's, several different passages is like, The sage declared that all of that has arisen from the evil mind, papachitta, from your evil mind, from your evil mind. Papa is a word that, I don't generally translate as evil, but negative. The whole concept of evil is probably different in the West than it was in India, ancient. But sometimes it's good to pull it out. Our minds are evil sometimes. And if you really want to find where evil is, it's not outside of ourselves. It's not, among terrorists in Pakistan or Afghanistan. That's not where evil is. Evil is that part of your mind that doesn't want to be happy. That's where the devil is. The part of your mind that says, no, you should be afraid. You should be stressed out. You should be worried. You shouldn't be happy. That's selfish. Or something like that. Whatever, there's all kinds of different versions. That's too simplistic, to just try and be satisfied and happy and content and filled with love and compassion instead of fear. You see, that's just too simplistic or whatever. That's the voice of evil. Unhappy people do evil things. Unhappy people do evil things. Happy people aren't interested in doing evil things, harming other people. It's unhappy people. That's where it comes from. That's where this, the terrible things that happen in our world come from people who are unhappy. So it's not at all a simplistic goal or a goal that's not worth pursuing or something like that. If you want to do good in the world, you have to learn how to be happy. That's the precondition for doing good in the world. And if you want to remain susceptible to doing bad in the world, then justify your unhappiness over and over and over again and refuse to try to change that. Because then you're susceptible to hurting others, because you want other people to feel like you do, basically. You want other people to feel as unhappy as you do. Misery loves company, we say. But so does happiness. Happiness also loves company. And when you're happy, you're not interested in making other people miserable. You want everyone to join the party, right? And so there is nothing else in the three worlds as daunting as the mind. three worlds are, the different understandings. This realm and then other sort of more subtler realms. Doesn't really matter. Nothing in the universe, you could say. Nothing in the universe, there is nothing else in the universe as daunting as the mind. So you see those little dots there, those little stars, means we'll skip a couple of verses now. And so, although I am unable to exercise control over external phenomena, I will restrain my own mind. What else do I need to dominate? This one I think everyone should cut out and put on their refrigerator. and this is, I'll go through it a little bit with you to know that this is exactly what he's saying. He's talking about bahya, bhava. Bahya means outside, external. Bhava means, phenomena, what's going on. Although I am unable to exercise control over external phenomena. Is anyone unclear that that's the case in your life? How many more years do you need to live to realize that you are unable to control external phenomena? If you were able to do that, you would be a lot better at it than you are now. Okay? So you can call it anything you want. You can call it karma, you can call it fate, you can call it God's will or whatever, but we're not in charge of what's happening to us externally, with the external conditions of our lives. Some people get I'll talk about it more on Monday night at the UU church. I always like to say UU church, UU. The UU church. About how karma really works. And because it's really important for people who have learned a little bit about karma to be disabused of how karma doesn't work. Karma isn't just another way to micromanage the universe. We've been trying to do that our whole lives, trying to adjust things, make other people say and do the things that we want them to do, make the job, work out, make the boss different, make our lives different, like control and micromanaging everything. And then people learn about karma and they say, oh, now I can do it, I'll just call it karma. So I'll be nice to the brother-in-law that's driving me crazy, and then I'll make him into someone else through the magical power of karma, and then you wait, oftentimes like a long time, and the brother-in-law doesn't really change that much, right? And then you go, well, wait, maybe karma doesn't work now. Karma does work, but you have to understand how it works. First of all, in the Orthodox Buddhist texts, they say that the karmic fruit of an action, the karmic result of an action, can ripen in one of three times. Can ripen in this life and any time in this life. Like possibly next week, possibly in 50 years from now. And that's only the first time it can ripen. The second time is in any life after this, in the next life after this. And the third one is in any lifetime after that. Okay? So when karma ripens is really unknowable to you. Unknowable to, and then they secondly say, this is just the Orthodox Buddhist position actually. The second thing they say is the subtle workings of karma are known only to the Buddhas, only to omniscient beings. So to go around saying, well, I did this and I got that from it, you're impersonating a Buddha. You're impersonating a person who's supposed to know everything, omniscient being. So I'll tell you a little joke about karma, and then I'll move on, because I'll have more to say probably on Monday at the UU. So this guy, let's call him George. He goes to heaven and goes through the pearly gates of heaven, walks on those golden streets of heaven, and he meets God. And he's pretty impressed by heaven. And so he says, God, this is very impressive up here. This is far way different than Earth, Really, really different, really amazing up here. He says, how long is 100 years in God time? So different in everything. How long? And God says, 1 moment. 1 minute. 1 minute of God time is 100 years in human time. Have you heard this one yet? And the guy goes, whoa, that's very impressive. That's way different than on Earth. And then he says, and how much is $1 million in God economy? And God goes, 1 cent. 1 cent is worth $1 million human dollars. And George is very impressed by this too. But he has the presence of mind to say before he leaves, God, could I have one of those God pennies to take back with me? And God goes, sure. Wait a minute. And that's a good joke to remember, that you can't control external phenomena. You cannot control what's happening out there. If you do good, good will come. If you do bad, bad will come. But not in the way you're expecting it. Okay? And I'll go into it more on Monday. It may take me 2 days to do it. Monday and Tuesday. No. Cindy's got to do her thing on Tuesday. Although and this is a pretty orthodox Buddhist text too, by the way. Nobody's going around saying, the guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life has got it all screwed up. And it says quite clearly here, I am unable to exercise control over outside external phenomena. Poo-poo happens, the waves come. The waves come and we don't control the waves. We don't control our experiences, they come. What happens next is out of our control, isn't it? And if it weren't out of our control, we would be very unhappy with that. You see, if we somehow could fulfill our fantasy, whether you call it, whether it's a secular fantasy or a spiritualized version of that secular fantasy of being able to control everything, we would be very, very unhappy with that, because nothing would ever be surprising. Everything would just be boring. All I knew was, it would be like those wave machines that they have at amusement parks. They just make the same wave over and over and over again. And very predictable, and yeah, I knew that was coming, as opposed to the ocean, which actually you can't predict which wave is going to come. Anybody who's sat there and looked at waves for a long time know that you never know. One of the biggest surprises, if you were a surfer, is to be sitting out beyond the break, watching the waves come in, and then we used to call it Big Bertha. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, the huge wave would come that was going to break right on your head. And then everyone starts to paddle for their lives, to try to get beyond the break of this one unexpected huge wave that comes in. There's no predicting these things. Can't predict these things. And life is like that. Can't predict the external phenomena. So give it up. Be accepting. Radical acceptance like this now. What else is there to do? You can say, no, I didn't want it, or no, I didn't expect that, all you want, but it's like this now, and it's out of your control. And it's continually out of your control. So the strategy isn't to try to create some cosmic wave machine. That's impossible, where every wave will be predictable and the same. You see, wave machines also make the same wave over and over and over. It's boring, also known as boring. So, it's a fantasy, first of all, and we'd be bored out of our minds if we could do it anyway. So, what's the point? So I'm unable to exercise control over external phenomena, but I'll restrain my own mind. That I can do. That's in my power. It's in my power to control myself. And then he says, what else do I need to dominate? which is kind of like, there's the optimistic thing, right? If I can control my mind, then it doesn't matter what waves come. I can deal with anything. I can deal with whatever, any kind of circumstance that I face because I've controlled myself, controlled my mind. There's another verse, some of you know it pretty well, that says something like, let me get it right now. You can either try to cover the whole earth with leather so that you never have to like have anything happen to your feet, right? So, nothing sharp that you ever step on or anything like that. You could try to cover the whole earth with leather. Or you could just put on some shoes. You see, you can't change the whole world. Can't cover it all with leather, but you can put on some walking shoes. Put on some walking shoes, and then you can walk anywhere. See? Even when acted upon or voiced, if one's thought is dim-witted, munda means stupid, there will be no results, such as obtaining a high birth, etc., which come about solely through a mind that has intensity. So here he's giving another kind of like ad for why we should be mindful. Ekaka means one. Intensity means you're one-pointed on what's happening now. The all-knowing one, that'd be the Buddha again, has said that all recitations of mantras and acts of austerities, japas tapas. Japas means mantra recitation and tapas means austerities. All recitations of mantras and acts of austerities, even if done over a long period of time, dirgha kala, like it says in the Yoga Sutra. Even if you do these things for a long, long time, make prayers, make offerings, do all kinds of stuff, religious stuff, are just useless if the mind is distracted or sluggish. If your mind isn't concentrated, it's just useless. Because all of these practices are meant to change you. They're not, and have no real other point, actually. Japas, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. See how fast I can say Om Mani Padme Hum? Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme, Om Mani Padme. And you can say that until you're blue in the face. But if you're Om Mani Padme, 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 it doesn't do any good. There's no point to it. A lot of loon in here, a lot of loon. If the mind is distracted or sluggish. It's like saying prayers, the same thing. If it's just all rote, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. What good is that? If there's no mental energy behind it, it's just blah blah. Those who have not cultivated the mind, which is the secret soul behind all the teachings. Guhya is the Sanskrit word, guhya. This is a typical word that they use for tantric teachings, for example. Esoteric, they're guhya, they're secret. And here he's saying the secret behind all the teachings is cultivation of the mind. Behind all the Dharma, behind all the teachings is cultivating your mind. Nothing else. The secret soul behind all the teachings. Aimlessly wander all over the place trying to eliminate suffering and obtain happiness. Just trying to, here and there, like maybe this will work, hopefully, But if you haven't gotten the secret soul behind all teachings taken care of, cultivation of the mind, then nothing's going to work out. And so I will make my mind well regulated. Svadhisthita. Svadhisthita means superintended. I'll superintend my mind, right? Like a principal is a superintendent or something? Yeah, and your mind is the kindergarten class of, rambunctious youngsters. And so you put, you put some discipline, get some discipline behind it. And, Get those guys in order. And well guarded, su rakshita. Rakshita means, rakshita is related to a Sanskrit word for demons, rakshasas. The rakshasas need to be raksha. They need to be guarded against. They're the ones who need guarding against. That's what it kind of means, rakshasa. So you need to guard. And su means very much. It's an emphatic prefix. Well guarded. If I am lax about my vrata, my vow. So what vow was he talking about here? He's talking about the vow. The vow. I will try to control myself. I will try to control my mind. If I'm lax about my vow to guard the mind, what use is there in me taking many other vows? What's the point of taking, refuge vows, bodhisattva vows, all these vows, if you haven't taken the vow, if you're lax about the vow? Let my possessions, loved ones, honor, body, and livelihood all be stripped from me, but may I never lose my cheerful mind. And that's another one that you could cut out. This is your most important possession. The word in Sanskrit is kushala chitta. And kushala can also mean competent, healthy, good in general. But I chose to sort of translate it as happy. We'll be a lot more mindful if we have a happy mind to be mindful about. It's not so pleasant to be mindful about a mind that's constantly complaining and whining and unhappy, yeah, right? I entreat those who wish to guard their minds to make every effort to keep watch over their mindfulness and full awareness. Now, this is these are the two twin brothers here, twin sisters, Smriti and Samprajanya. Smriti means, remember what Smriti literally means? What? Remember what it literally? It means to remember. Literally, it means remembering. And then this full awareness thing, the chapter unfolds that a little bit, the relationship between mindfulness and full awareness. Just as a man who is stricken with disease is unable to do much of anything, so is the mind in which these two are impaired. Which two? Mindfulness and full awareness. Just is incapable of doing anything consequential, incapable of doing anything of much meaning in life. If the mind lacks full awareness, whatever one hears, contemplates, and meditates upon does not stick in the memory like water draining out of a leaky vessel. And we're all familiar with this phenomenon, right? Of going to a Dalai Lama teaching for 2 hours. And I don't know about you, but there's a kind of like, in my case, there was a kind of like a curse about the Dalai Lama thing. I've had the great fortune to hear the Dalai Lama speak live maybe as many as 10 times, maybe even more, I can't remember. But I used to go and in the early days, when I first started going to Dalai Lama teachings, I'd sit down, and usually he teaches in really nice places, right? When he comes to the West, and it's all like, plush seats and air conditioning and everything. And then he'd start, and I would just, immediately, it didn't really matter like how much sleep I had gotten the night before or anything. It was just like soporific, And so I tried to have all kinds of strategies about this. So I'd just sleep during the Tibetan parts. And then when the English translator started again, I kind of like this. It got better over time, but for the first couple of times, it was really torturous. A lot of teachings like this are like that too. I've been on the other side. I know. It's a lot harder over there, actually. It's a lot harder. It's a lot easier to, stay more or less fully aware when you're actually having to talk. But when you're listening to someone else and, it's very difficult. It goes in one ear and out the other, and your mind starts wandering and all of that. And it kind of doesn't matter like how pleasant it is in the room or how much sleep you got or anything like that. It just happens. It's hard to keep the mind, kind of focused, right? Where are I? Stricken with disease. Oh yeah, full awareness. What was I doing? Yeah, it's like water draining out of a leaky vessel. Even many spiritually educated people, even those with faith and extraordinary determination, yatna is a word that you often find in yoga texts, means like really making effort. Yatna para means like really making effort. Even those kind of people become corrupted by the dosha, the defect, which is the lack of full awareness. So, here he's kind of saying like, look, you can be as religious as you want. You can have all kinds of faith, and you can even have a lot of determination, but if you don't have the awareness, if you don't have full awareness, it undermines everything else. Undermines everything else. Even those who have amassed merit are robbed of it by the thief, which is the lack of full awareness, following upon the loss of mindfulness. So here he starts to tip his hand about how these two go together. Mindfulness is the guard. And if the guard goes to sleep, if the guard like falls down on the job, then full awareness goes. So mindfulness is the guard of full awareness. Mindfulness is the prerequisite, is the necessary watchman for maintaining full awareness. So that's how he's distinguishing between these two things. Here he's starting to kind of show us that. The thief, which is the lack of full awareness, following upon the loss of mindfulness. And they go to an unhappy realm, durgati. This could mean, in this context, they go to some hell realm. But it also means that you have an unhappy life. You have unhappy experiences. This gang of miscreants, the word is sangha, gang. Sangha, the sangha of Tuskara. Tuskara are thieves and robbers. And so what are they? The mental afflictions. So now he's kind of like showing us, pointing to, well, why would my mindfulness ever go? What would cause my mindfulness to be disturbed? And he said, well, your mental afflictions would. The rise of the kleshas, what we call kleshas. Klesha is related to English words like calamity or holly, the ch and the ha. Holly, holly's like sharp, right? It's an irritant, like it's prickly. So a klesha is prickly. Klesha is something that causes us, discomfort, destroys the peace of mind. This gang of miscreants, the mental afflictions, look for some kind of entry point. See, they're their real enemies, by the way. This text quite clearly says that in other chapters. Your enemies are not outside of you. They're not external. They're not the terrorists that we imagine like holed up in some cave somewhere in Afghanistan. Those are not your enemies. And the reason, and then he goes and explains like why that is. They are only like once in a while punch in and say, okay, I'll be the terrorist. I'll be a terrorist now. Trying to destroy the free world or whatever they think they're doing. It's just like once in a while they do that. The rest of the time, they're eating and hanging out with their families, and they got a whole other life to lead besides just being a terrorist all the time. I like to think of them as having hobbies. Like maybe they're playing shuffleboard in there, or stamp collecting. Maybe they've got stamps from all over the world. They travel a lot, so maybe they get stamps everywhere they go, and they put them in their little stamp book. They're people, they're human beings. They got whole lives to lead besides being a terrorist. But your mental afflictions don't have hobbies. They don't have families. They don't have anything else to do but upset you, cause havoc, wreak havoc in your life, full time, 24/7. That's all they do. That's their whole job description. And they don't have anything else but a job. They don't have like any downtime. They don't take any holidays. They don't take weekends off. 24/7, just there to destroy your happiness, your anger, your jealousy, your envy, your pride, your doubt, anything that arises in your being that's destroying your peace of mind is a klesha. And they are your true and only enemies. Your true and only enemies. So they find entryway. How do they get in there? They find entryway when the guard is down. See, if the guard of mindfulness goes down, then they find a way to get in there and destroy your happiness. And so never withdraw the mindfulness from the mind's doorway. Never withdraw mindfulness from the mind's doorway. And if it should run off, it should be brought back with the full recollection of the torments of hell. So actually the full recollection here, so what he's talking about mindfulness, smriti. And then he says it should be brought back with samsmriti, with full recognition, full memory, samsmriti, of like the pain that I cause myself through the lack of mindfulness. See, the unhappiness that the lack of mindfulness allows in my mind by letting those kleshas just have their way with me over and over and over again. When mindfulness remains on guard at the doorway of the mind, full awareness then arrives, and once there does not again depart. So again, the relationship between mindfulness and full awareness. When mindfulness is there, memory, remembering, right? Remembering to remember, remembering to be here now, remembering not to space out. When mindfulness remains on guard, then full awareness comes. Then full awareness can arise. I should first of all always train the mind in this way. This is, and it does say that purvam, this should be the first thing that I do in a spiritual practice, is to train the mind to be mindful and fully aware. I should first of all train the mind in, and I should continuously keep it docile. Keep your mind like a trained pet. Sit, stay, roll over, like that. Like a bump on a log. This is a phrase that we'll see lots of times in this chapter. Kashta means wood, and vat means like a piece of wood. So we have that expression in English, right? A bump on the log, like a piece of wood. So you should keep your mind like a piece of wood, like discussion of the body, really. Okay, so I warned you that it's not just about mindfulness of thought today. It's also about mindfulness of action. The eyes should never cast about without purpose, just like looking hither and thither. The gaze should always be downwards, as in meditation. Okay, this is a mindful nerd, okay? This is a mindful nerd kind of. But don't worry, he'll tell you not to be completely nerdy. One should occasionally look in the distance in order to rest one's eyes. Like, and when one catches a glimpse of another one, when one catches a glimpse of another, one should look up in order to say hello. When somebody comes towards you, you should hello. Well, that's what it says. So as to remain aware of the possible dangers on the road and so forth, one should now and again look to the left and the right, forward and back. This is practical advice on, how to live, okay? Practical advice is check it out once in a while. What's happening? When pausing, one should look into the distance. And one should look behind only having turned around. So none of this. This was before the time when we had those cameras now in our cars, so we don't have to turn around. We just look. We just look behind us, right? And then they make beeping sounds when you get too close to the curb or the other car. One should advance or retreat, having checked what's ahead or behind. This is mindfulness. It's just mindfulness of the body. And so in every situation, having ascertained what one should do, one should proceed. So like having ascertained, well, is there anything in front of me? Well, yes, I should avoid it. Is there anything right? Just like being mindful as you go through your life in your actions. Having ascertained what one should do, one should proceed. Positioning oneself and thinking, the body should stay like this, one carries on. So you sit down on a chair and you say, the body's going to stay like this now. This is what my body is going to do. And it's not going to fidget and it's not going to get up and leave because I want to stay for the class. So you say, sit, body, sit. This is in many ways the whole point of a yoga asana practice, is to get in control of your physicality so that your body does what you say it's going to do. Wouldn't you say? Yeah. And so when you say sit, it sits. And when you say bend, it bends. And it doesn't say, ow, ow, no, Or if it does say that, you say, shut up, or something. You're my servant. The body is our servant. It's not in control. The body should not be in control, right? We should be in control of the body. The body is just a vehicle for the mind, and the mind's in control. But that's not always or often the case with most of us, right? Our body is in control most of the time. So one should advance or retreat, blah, blah, blah. Positioning oneself and thinking the body should stay like this, one carries on. Periodically checking, is the body still positioned? Like I said I was going to, is it still doing what I told it to? Is it still sitting? Is it fidgeting? And so the mind, that crazed elephant, should be scrutinized with all one's might. Fastened to the great stake, which is mind conditioned by dharma, I should have translated it, by the truth, by proper instruction. It does not escape. Keeping close watch on the mind, where are you taking me now? Like that. Where are you going now? One should not turn away from the hitching post, which is intense attention, not even for a moment. Now, this is a verse that I really like. And, I kind of advertised it a little bit last night when I was talking about mindfulness nerds. If one is unable to do this, like in times of distress or celebration, one should just relax. Yatha sukham is a very often found phrase in Sanskrit. It means as you wish, whatever's happy, whatever you want to do. So he's saying here, you should drop mindfulness in and then he mentions a couple of specific times, and then there is the implication that there could be other times besides these, but these two are quite specifically mentioned. Times of distress, bhaya means fear, as I mentioned. In emergencies, like if someone has just been hit by a car, you don't sit there mindfully, sort of, wondering how you're feeling about that and what your body is doing now and what thoughts have occurred about cars and hitting people. You go and help the person, right? Immediately, without thought, without mindfulness, right? Automatically, spontaneously. So in emergencies like that. There's in the Hindu tradition, there's this whole concept of swadharma, of your own duty. It's translated your own duty. Everyone should do their own duty. Everyone should follow their, what they have to do in life. And then there are general sorts of instruction. Sanatana dharma means like universal duty, So everyone shares in universal duty, and then we all have our particular duties to fulfill. fulfilled. And then there's a whole other category, apadharma. Apadharma means your duty in emergencies, which the other two are suspended. In an emergency, you do what you need to do, what you have to do. And so it's a similar idea here. You don't just sit there mindfully, sucking your thumb in an emergency. You do something. You act spontaneously. And then he says also, utsava, when you're kicking it. Celebration. When you're making a joyful noise unto the Lord. When you're ecstatically dancing. When you're celebrating life. Then he says, never mind that mindfulness nerdy thing, Check it at the door and have a good time. Some celebration. And then he also mentions, and when one is practicing giving, it is said that one may disregard the strict observance of the moral code. Very interesting. And I looked around for commentaries on this one, because I go, wait a minute. The word is quite specific. Shila means ethics, the moral code. And it says you should just let it go. You should upekshana. Upekshana, same kind of word as upeksha. What does upeksha mean? Equanimity. But upekshana is a slightly different word. It means disregarding. Just disregarding. Indifference. Indifference towards what? Towards shila. Towards ethics. When? In acts like giving. When one is practicing giving. When one is thinking about someone else, you should stop thinking about yourself and your own morality. That's giving, that's generosity. Generosity is what about them? What can I do for someone else? And so you suspend the whole thing about what about me? What about me? Am I okay? Am I a good person? Am I following the rules and regulations? And you suspend all that because you're thinking about them. Altruism. Very interesting. When one becomes aware that something needs to be done, one should think of nothing else. With one's whole heart and soul dedicated to the task until it has been accomplished. This is mindfulness in action. Mindfulness in action is when there's something that needs to be done, you do it with full attention, with one's whole heart and soul dedicated to doing it as well as you can do it, right? This same kind of instruction you'll find in a text like the Bhagavad Gita. When there is something to do, when your duty calls, right? In whatever way it is in your life, you don't run away from it or say, no, I should have someone else's duty. I don't want my duty. Want someone else's life. I don't want this life. You should do your duty. The Gita says you should do your own duty. It's more important to do your own duty poorly than to do someone else's duty well. Even poorly, because it's yours, okay? It's your thing to do in life, and everyone's got their own things to do in life. Everyone's got their own situations, their own path, their own set of responsibilities. And when you have a responsibility arise, you pay attention to it, you focus on it, and you complete it. You see? You don't procrastinate. It doesn't say here about I'll get to it next week. You don't procrastinate, and you don't do it half-heartedly either. See, this is living mindfully also, is living fully in your actions, fully getting your back behind what it is you're doing, whatever that is, right? In this way, everything is done well. Otherwise, neither this nor that happens. It's just sort of a slacker way of life. And as well, the mental affliction, which is the lack of full awareness, will increase. So did you see what he just did there? He called the lack of full awareness a mental affliction. It's a mental affliction. It's a klesha. It's just like anger. It's in the same category as anger or depression or, pride, or envy, the lack of full awareness. One should restrain the inclination to engage in various kinds of chit-chat. Something which occurs frequently and which concerns itself with all kinds of intriguing things. There's all kinds of things we can gossip about in chit-chat. In some ancient texts, already in ancient texts, they say there's basically two things that we gossip about. We gossip about politics and other people's sexuality, other people's sexual behavior and politics. And if you look at pretty much any magazine that's there at the counter, at the checkout counter before you're checking out of a grocery store, see if that's not the case. Combined. Even better, right? When the politicians are involved in, scandals, sexual scandals. So, where was I?
46.
Chit-chat, what is that, 46? Yeah. Something which occurs frequently and which concerns itself with all kinds of intriguing things. So, this is mindfulness of speech, of course. Mindfulness of speech. What is it that you're talking about? Should it happen that one, without any purpose, tears up the earth, cuts off pieces of grass, doodles, or the like? This is fidgeting. This is ancient Indian fidgeting. You would tear up the earth a little bit, and then you would cut pieces of grass. You just pluck that, just meaningless, mindless behavior, physical behavior. Or they actually said the word does mean writing, doodling. Just like taking, drawing stuff, Ever done that? Should it happen that you did that? Or the like, he should recall his Buddhist training. Smritva is related to that same smriti word. One should be mindful. One should recall Tathagatim Shiksham. The Shiksham means the training of the Tathagatas, the Buddhists. So here, there's kind of no avoiding Buddhist here, because that's exactly what it says. The training that you get as a Buddhist. You should remember that training did not include doodling, let alone tearing up earth or cutting off pieces of grass meaninglessly, you see? Fidgeting around. Whenever one wants to move or speak, one should examine one's mind, and then with composure. Dhairya means constancy or firmness. Act appropriately. You see, just controlling yourself, controlling your actions and your speech. When one sees the mind becoming attracted or repulsed, desire and aversion, just over and over and over again, you find this. I want something I don't have. I don't want something I do have. When one sees the mind becoming attracted or repulsed, then one should not do or say anything, but just keep still. Statavyam. Statavyam means stay. Stay put. Keep still. Everybody, what is that old, there's a song by that 9-foot black model. What was her name? Grace Jones? Everybody stand still. Nobody get hurt.
Nobody move.
Yeah. Nobody move. Everyone stand still. Nobody get hurt. I guess that's the usual line that robbers use when they're in the bank and stuff like that. So just stay still. Nobody get hurt. Stay still like a bump on a log. Like a bump on a log. When the mind is, I want or I don't want, just get control of it. When the mind becomes arrogant, contemptuous, full of pride and conceit, scornful, superior, duplicitous, or deceitful, when it looks like it's going to exalt myself or disrespect someone else, when it becomes abusive and agitated, chill out. Hold still like a bump on a log. Okay? Don't follow it. Don't act upon it. Be mindful of it. This is happening. It's like this now inside here. But just don't make any sudden moves. Make no sudden moves. I think that's the phrase actually they use in bank robberies. Make no sudden moves. Very good advice, okay? Make no sudden moves. Be careful. Be ponderous, Take control. Is this really what I want to do next? This thought has arisen. This feeling has arisen. What's my best play here? Well, you got to stop first, right, to get that clear. When the mind longs for acquisitions, when you see those new pair of shoes, honor, fame, or a retinue of followers or admirers, I should then just keep still like a bump on a log. You could write a song about this, John. When the mind is just self-interested and averse to the interests of others, when it's sva arta instead of para arta. Para means other people. Sva means me. The arta means interest. So when the mind is just self-interested and averse to the interests of others, or when it just wants to talk out of a desire for an audience. Oftentimes people in public talks, when you open it up to questions, if you don't tell them it's got to be a question, like I did on Monday night here, they get up and they start talking. And and they just want an audience. They just want and somebody else has brought them a whole audience that they can talk to. They didn't gather their own audience. They didn't rent the auditorium. They didn't put out the flyers. So they're just like leeches, Well, I got something to say, I got some stuff to say, and they just get up to talk because they want an audience. Where was I again? I'm having a hard time keeping track of myself here tonight. When the mind is just self-interested, or when it wants to talk out of a desire for an audience, I should then just keep still, like a bump on a log. So if you have that urge, at this retreat, just assume the log position. When it is impatient, slothful, paranoid, impudent, or gossipy, or when it is bent on self-aggrandizement, I should then just keep still like a bump on a log. Perceiving the mind to be troubled or uselessly engaged, a strong person should always firmly restrain it through applying the antidote. Pratipaksha is the standard Indian word, Sanskrit word for antidote. Paksha is wing. Pratipaksha is you should apply the other wing to balance things out, you see. So then the next verses seem to be talking about the antidote to all these kinds of mental states that you want to remain like a bump on a log about. So instead of having those kinds of things come to mind, maybe to bring up these things: fully resolved and completely serene, chilled out. Serene, tranquil, shamatha, whatever you want to call it, it means the same thing. At peace, chilled out. Steadfast, considerate, respectful, modest, unassuming. Peaceful, totally engaged in gratifying others, thinking about other people and what you can do for them. Undisturbed by the mutually irreconcilable desires of the spiritually immature. Bala is, again, often found to mean exactly this. Bala means child, but in this context, it means the spiritual children, the people who haven't come to a summer retreat and gotten some education. So they just have no clue. They're like kindergarteners because they haven't had any education. So what's this mutually irreconcilable desires? And that you're supposed to stay undisturbed when you see it in the spiritually immature. And what it seems to mean is that everyone wants to be happy. Everyone really does want to be happy. But the spiritually immature have no idea of how to do that. So they do exactly the opposite. They think, I desire happiness, but the way I'll get it is because I desire this person to yell at this person. I desire happiness, and I'm going to get it by fulfilling the desire to yell at this person. Mutually irreconcilable desires. You see what I mean? You can't be happy by hurting others. And many, many people are trying that. You know, nation states are trying that. The United States of America is trying that right now. Maybe we can get peace through war. Maybe we can have some security and peace in our country by disturbing the security and peace in other people's country. How's that going to happen? Irreconcilable desires. Yeah. So then you say, my mind is undisturbed by that because I understand that they are bala. They're children. They don't get it. Like Jesus said, Father, forgive them because they're idiots. That's the new revised version. No, right? Forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Forgive the 1%. Don't have like some big conniption fit about people that you think are, abusive to other people or greedy, et cetera, et cetera. What are they? This isn't the way to be happy. It's not the way to be happy by exploiting other people and by hoarding great deals of money. And it's not the way to be happy by like leaking nuclear stuff into the waters. They don't know. People are ignorant. We're all pretty ignorant. And then there are some people who are just like no clue. And they do exactly the thing that will hurt them in the hopes that will make them happy. You see? That's just foolishness, childlike behavior, stupidity. And the proper response to that is not anger or getting all knickers in a twist or something like that, but some compassion. Have some compassion for people who don't know even what you know, which isn't probably all that much, or what I know, which isn't that much maybe, but at least we know something. We got a little, know something. I remember when I went to India to study Sanskrit as a graduate student, and I had the great fortune of working with a great man, a great Sanskritist, who was also a great Brahmin. He was a practitioner, and so it was kind of best of both worlds to be able to work with him. And after like 9 months of daily study of Sanskrit, after 4 years in graduate school of study, he said to me one day, you know something. Now you know something. Like, which I took as a great compliment. It wasn't like you're awesome, you know everything, or you know a little something. And that's a good attitude to have as a spiritual practitioner. We don't know everything, that's for sure, but we know a little something, and we should use that to control our own lives, of course, to mold our own lives and to help other people. We know a little something, so you help other people with the something that you know, without a whole lot of arrogance and pride and goody two-shoes mentality about how awesome you are. You know a little something, and a lot of people don't even know that. And they're flailing around, out there trying to be happy, just like you, trying to live a good life, just like you are, but they have no clue on how to do it. And so, we send you out into the world on Sunday afternoon and let you loose now that you know something, a little something. Undisturbed by the mutually irreconcilable desires of the spiritually immature, but rather filled with compassion for them, knowing that this is due to the arising of the mental afflictions. They can't help themselves in a way. They really can't help themselves. Always doing those irreproachable things that are in the best interest of myself and other living beings, I will control my mind. I will be free of pride and become like a work of art. This Sanskrit is beautiful here. Nirmanam iva nirmanam darayam yesha manasam. So you see the first two words, it's a pun actually. Those are nirmanam iva means like a piece of art. Like nirmana, like in the Nirmanakaya, for those of you who know, it's the same word. Nirmanakaya means transformation. emanation or transformation. So it's another word for a piece of art. You're transforming something into something else. Nirmanam Eva. And then Nirmanam. Okay, and I'm sure that no one can hear the difference. But there's a difference between Nirmana. Listen, Nirmana and Nirmana. Those are two different N's there. One of them has a dot underneath them and one of them doesn't. It's a retroflex, Nirmana versus Nirmana. Nirmana is related to the word mana, manas. Nir means no mind. No, literally, no. And manas means the mind, nirmana means no pride. So the word for pride is related to the word for mind. Thinking that you're hotshot. Thinking that you're hotshot. So then you get mana, which is pride. Nirmana, without pride. I will become nirmana. I will become like a piece of art. Beautiful phrase. So that's a nice way to think about life, actually. That we're in the process of making our lives like a piece of art, like a sculpture, like a beautiful painting. And that's an ongoing project. Not complete. You know something. You know little something, maybe. So, you got a few things ready. This part of the face is pretty good. So now you work on the rest of it, Staying mindful every single moment. Mukhir mukhu is a phrase in Sanskrit, moment to moment, moment by moment, instant by instant. Staying mindful every single moment, again and again. Smritva. Whenever they repeat something in Sanskrit, it means to emphasize it. Mindfully. Mukhur mukhu means every single instant, remembering. Again and again. Staying mindful every single moment, again and again, that I, after such a long time, we don't know how many births it took us to get here, but we got this one, have attained this precious life of leisure. Leisure and fortune, right? I will keep my mind as steady as Mount Meru. Mount Meru is in ancient Indian cosmology, is the mountain, the center of the world. The mountain around which everything else kind of revolves. The ultimate symbol of stability. I will keep my mind like that. Okay, so how are you going on the exercises here? Yeah, making a lot of progress on that? Some are looking like, some are maintaining mindfulness by looking down. Room mindfulness. So exercise for class 3 each day for the next week or between now and tomorrow night. 15 minutes. And this one is while you're doing something. While you're doing something, not sitting around in your room or on the grass or something. While you're at work or taking care of the kids or hanging out with other people in the cafeteria. While you continue to act, to carry out your responsibilities, practice awareness of your own mind. For 15 minutes, okay? So that means that you've got to carve it out. And you say like, okay, now it starts, tick, 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 tick. And then keep track of it. If you've got a watch that has a timer on it, that'd be really good. Set the timer for 15 minutes and then interact with other people mindfully for 15 minutes. That's all, okay? And that's gonna, after that, you'll probably wanna go and refresh yourself, replenish bodily fluids that you've lost. Take one of those electrolyte drinks, take a shower maybe. This is hard. Concentrate on being fully attentive to your mental and emotional responses to outside stimuli. And if during these 15 minutes you discover that your knee-jerk response to any experience that occurs is negative, mental affliction arises. Just remain aware and observant while remaining like a bump on a log. Don't follow it. Don't follow the inclination. And just watch it. Just let it happen and watch it, but don't follow it. restraining yourself from the impulsive negative response. And then I give you a little encouragement here. It's only for 15 minutes, yo. Oh, you can do it. This is possible. 15 minutes. It may not be possible all day long, but it's possible to carve that time out and just as an exercise. And see how it goes. See how it goes. Okay.